Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope you're doing well. Can you all hear me? Somebody's typing. Oh, thank you, Cicero. All right. Let me see how many people. 20 people so far. That's great. Hi, Monica. Thank you. Monica from Peru. Welcome. Luciana, thank you. Maria Eduarda, good afternoon. Maria Eduarda, you're my student, aren't you? Okay, let me change here so we can start. Márcia from São Paulo, okay. I live in Vitória, Espírito Santo. Luciana from São Paulo. Great. So let's get started. Yes, please feel free to keep on using the chat window. Juliana from Curitiba. Larissa from Três Lagoas, Minas Gerais. Okay, greetings from Curitiba. Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paulo Torres, and I couldn't be happier to be here with you today. It's truly a pleasure to talk about the teaching of grammar, a topic that's very close to my heart. Many thanks to Disal, to Lyrica, and everyone involved for this kind invitation. And of course, thank you for joining me and making this moment possible. Let's make it a great webinar together. Okay, Mato Grosso do Sul. I was born in Mato Grosso, but I've been living in Vitória for over 30 years. Yeah. Oh, I'm a capixaba. I consider myself a capixaba now, right? Well, you'll see the references in my email address on the last slides. So if you want the presentation, email me and I'll be glad to send it to you. All right? Okay. Lohane, welcome. Lohane was also my student. Great. Great to have all you here. Well, who's Paulo Torres? Good afternoon, Lauren, another student of mine. Great. Well, I have 31 years of experience in ELT as a teacher, teacher trainer, and academic consultant. I started on October 1st, 1994. Oh, 31 years. I started at the age of 15. I'm 46 now. I hold a master's degree in linguistics and a postgraduate in bilingual education and cognition. I'm currently a substitute professor at Universidade Federal do Espírito Santo, and I serve as members director on the National Board of Disal. And speaking of Disal, which is the largest English teacher association in Brazil, I have a special invitation to all of you. Next week, we're going to celebrate Teachers' Day, or Teachers' Month. We're having a huge event which starts on Monday, October 13th, and ends on Saturday, October 18th. It's free and open to members and non-members. All you have It seems that I was disconnected. Can you hear me again? Yeah, okay, great. Oh, I'm back. Wonderful. Well, so I was speaking about Brastiso, and next year, Brastiso turns 40 years old, and we're celebrating this conference and 40 years of Brastiso here in Vitória, in Espírito Santo. It's going to be our 22nd Brastiso International Conference. We expect over 1,000 participants, and we would love to have all of you here in Vitória. The theme of our conference this next year is Thrive Together. So hope to see all of you here. In order to register for the conference, all you have to do is click on this link, okay? And the last thing about Brastiso is call for papers. We always welcome everyone who wants to present in our conferences, and call for papers are open. Submissions started on October 1st and they end on November 23rd this year, 2025. Okay? If you also want to present, if you are a first-time speaker, we'll be more than glad to help you with anything you need. It would be great to have all of you here, okay? All right. Well, this is... Yes, I can. I'll do that. Let me... The links are in the chat window again, okay? There you go. Right. Well, according to my abstract, my presentation explores inductive, engaging ways to teach grammar as a resource for real communication. Practical ideas will be shared to promote interaction while aligning with Base Nacional Comum Curricular principles. Well, this is what I want to do this afternoon with you for 1 hour. And then when I end my presentation, please let me know if I have done it, okay? Right. Well, an inductive approach to teaching language starts with examples and asks learners to find rules. It can be compared with a deductive approach that starts by giving learners rules, then examples, then practice. Oh, my focus is on the inductive approach, which, according to the inductive approach, we should start by teaching language with examples and then ask learners to find rules, and if necessary, explain the grammar structure, right? Let me change here. Oh, this is going to be my focus. This book, Grammar Practice Activities, written by Penure, was one of my references. Oh, please regard the tips I'll be giving you as suggestions, right? It all depends on your teaching context, on also the textbook you use may influence. So that's why I would like to ask you to regard the tips I'll be giving you as suggestions. Let me see how many people. 45. That's great. Well, Penure says, the learning of grammar should be in the long term as one of the means of acquiring a thorough mastery of the language as a whole, not as an end in itself. But what is meant by this? We shouldn't see the teaching of grammar as an end in itself, right? It should be used as a resource to help students do lots and lots of other things which they need to do in real communication. At the Federal University, I teach. It seems I was disconnected again, right? Oh, okay. Sorry. So, as I was saying, we should think of grammar as a resource, as something that's going to help students when they actually have to communicate in real situations, and not as an end in itself. Uh, which means we shouldn't start by teaching grammar structures and after that have students practice that grammar structure. Because if we do this, what we're doing is using the deductive approach, which I don't think it is the most appropriate one. In my opinion, the inductive approach works much better than the deductive approach. It is more hardworking, but it does work better based on my some years of experience and research. Okay. Um, oops. Yeah, this one. What about BNCC? So BNCC is Brazil's national curriculum that sets out what every student should learn in school. And this document was also one of my references because what I wanted to do was to show that what Penny says about the teaching of grammar and other authors um, can also be found, is also aligned with the document we have in Brazil. And here is the first extract from the document, okay? There's the translation there, which is my translation. I'm going to read the version in English, okay? It says, the linguistic knowledge, axis, is built through contextualized and integrated practices of language use, analysis, and reflection in the service of speaking, reading, and writing. Oh, I have underlined in the service of, because again, grammar should be in the service of something. It should be seen as a resource because it is much more important for students to know how to use grammar in real communication, even if they make mistakes, even if they don't say she likes ice cream and they say she like ice cream, but they're able to communicate. Um, that's fine. That's the most important thing, right? It doesn't mean that we're not going to correct our students and show them the correct way of saying things. But we need to bear this in mind. It is in the service of other things. It shouldn't be seen as an end in itself. We know that some speakers speak English accurately, but they're not very successful uh, communicators because sometimes they don't know the right grammar or the level of formality they should use depending on the context they are, right? Let me see here. Okay, there's nothing in the chat. Okay. Let me go on. Penure also says that there is no doubt that some kind of implicit knowledge of grammar is necessary for the mastery of a language at anything beyond a very basic level. We have to teach grammar. We are English teachers. The difference is how we are going to teach grammar. and how is the difference when it comes to lots of things in the classroom, right? Because quite often we know what we have to do, why we have to do this or that, when it should be done. But what is going to make the real difference is how we're going to do it. So the question is, how should we teach grammar? How should we go about the teaching of grammar? And once again, in my opinion, we should use the inductive approach. Let me change here. And when Penure mentions practice, she says that practice may be defined as any kind of engagement with the language on the part of the learner, usually under teacher supervision. Which means we should provide lots of opportunities for students to practice in the classroom in different ways. So if we're teaching the present perfect simple, we have to provide them with opportunities to practice the present perfect simple in different ways, in pairs, in trios, orally, in a written exercise, and also the speaking activity and the written activity, they should be done in. Well, I apologize, but I'm back again, right? Yes, I am. Okay. Right. So we're talking about practice. And now we're going to start discussing the 5 key features which, according to Penure, should be considered when teaching grammar. And they are validity, quantity, success orientation, heterogeneity, and interest. I'm also going to show you some examples so that we can discuss these examples. No image? Let me do something here. What about now? Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay. Right. Thank you. So as I was saying, these are the 5 key features that, according to Penure, we should consider when working with grammar activities. And when the grammar activity doesn't have one or more than one of these features, we should try to adapt the activity so that it has as many features as possible. Validity. The procedure should, in fact, practice what it says it practices and not something else. What is meant by this? For an activity to be valid, it should practice what it says it practices. For instance, if you want to work on present continuous, does the activity which you prepared or does the activity which you have in the textbook practice the present continuous and gives the students the opportunity to actually go a bit beyond the structure itself? Well, let's see 2 examples. Okay, there's a question here. What do you say to students who come up with statement claiming that studying grammar is boring? Well, Luis, in my opinion, it is related to how we go about teaching grammar. Let's see if with my tips, I can help you with this, okay? Right. Let me go back to the presentation. And let's see then the first example, which talks about validity. Okay. Well, this is the first example. The aim is to practice the present perfect, okay? Then the sentence is, 2 years ago, we left the country and came to live in the city. We are still living in the city today. So we, blah, 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 in the city for 2 years. Can you please type the answer in the chat window? Yeah. And then, Luis, I agree with your students if the only type of grammar exercise to practice the present perfect is this one, is gap fill, then I agree with them that it is boring, okay? Well, the point here is talking about this example, okay? The point is that in order to fill in the missing verb, the learner has to read and understand what lines of the 2 lines of text only, right? With 2 verb forms in them. And the time and thought, which are actually invested in the target item, the present perfect in this example, is relatively small. Because if the student already knows the structure of the present perfect, it won't take a long time for the student to answer this. And perhaps we are not giving students the opportunity to go beyond and use okay, here I am again. So only gap fill exercises should be avoided, right? We need to include other kinds of exercises. Yes, Vera, that's it. I have already changed here the connection, but well, I apologize. Let's move on. But that's fine. I can go back and explain again. Just let me know, okay? Keep on using the chat box, that everything will be fine. So now the next key feature is quantity. And what is meant by quantity? The aim of a practice activity is to provide opportunities to engage with the target structure, right? It seems to be obvious, isn't it? That this is the aim of a practice activity. And this is related to practice again, right? Because if the number of times that a learner, in fact, practices is small, then the practice is less effective in achieving its aim. Uh, Even if practice is valid, even if it practices what it says it practices, a valid activity in terms of quantity should provide more opportunities to engage with the target language. The more opportunities, the better. But of course, with different kinds of activities and exercises. And it doesn't mean that we need to prepare lots and lots of different activities. We can use the same activity in different ways. For example, if you have questions, then the students are going to answer the questions in pairs. You can have them answer the same questions in different pairs. Another thing you can do is have students write their answers. You can also, I have written my answers, so I'm going to give my answers to one of my peers, and they have to write my sentences using the third person. Oh, 4 different ideas, 4 different suggestions based on the same activity. So what I mean is we don't need to think of lots and lots of different activities to provide opportunities to engage with the target structure. We can use the same one in different ways, and not necessarily in the same class, because this activity done in a different way can be used 2 weeks from now as a revision, for example, right? After quantity, let's look at success orientation. Success orientation, what is meant by this? The activity should be designed to elicit acceptable and successful responses. When we create an activity, we should have this in mind. Are the questions, are the sentences designed to elicit acceptable and successful responses? Because if the activity which was designed, or if the activity which is in the textbook is more confusing than it helps students, then we need to adapt it, right? It won't help them that much. But obviously, I'm not saying that there is no place for mistakes and error corrections. That's not what I'm saying. Doing something wrong and being corrected will help raise awareness of what is correct. But it will not help automatization of the skill. It is only when the learner starts getting it right on their own and does so repeatedly that they are on the way to real mastery. And once again, the more opportunities we provide, the better. Oops. What about heterogeneity? A heterogeneous exercise is one which may be done at various different levels. The same exercise or the same grammar item, which can be done at various different levels. Because as we know, all classes are more or less heterogeneous, right? So a homogeneous exercise cannot possibly provide effective practice for all the students. Let's look at this first example here. Jenny is a baby, so she go to school. What is the answer, please? Okay, letter A, Jenny is a baby, so she doesn't go to school. All right. This is an example of a grammar exercise that we see very often in textbooks, right? We also see this kind of activity in exams. And this is a multiple choice question which is an example of a homogeneous exercise. There's only one right answer, right? That's why it's homogeneous. A learner who has not mastered the rules about when you use do or is with negative verbs in the present will probably get it wrong. And then again, the focus is only on the structure of the language and not necessarily on meaning, which is another thing which is very important, right? You may have already heard of meaning over form, right? So when we say meaning over form, what we mean is that meaning is sometimes more important than form, than knowing how to use the correct structure in that situation, right? Because if I am not able to communicate, even by using correct grammar, an accurate sentence, I may not be understood depending on the situation. And going back to this example here, if we think of students who haven't mastered yet this grammar item, we can also think of students who have already mastered this grammar item, right? And then this learner who's well on the way to mastering the rule and can use this grammar structure and create different meaningful statements has no opportunity to do so. Because this kind of exercise doesn't provide this opportunity. So let's see how we can adapt this exercise. Well, let's look at the second example. It says, Jenny is a baby. She doesn't go to school. What else doesn't she do? Well, what have we done here? We have not only provided pre-learning and success orientation by supplying a model of the kind of sentence we're looking for. Not only this, we're also opening possibilities for learners to respond with sentences at all sorts of level. But what we're doing there is we're still practicing the same grammar structure, right? We're giving students an example of the structure we want to focus, and we are not telling them that this is the present simple third person negative. Our focus here is on meaning, on how we use the present simple. So, she doesn't go to school is one example. What else doesn't she do? And then you can start enlisting from students. And then they go, oh, she doesn't have breakfast alone. What else? Help me with other possibilities. What else doesn't she do? She's a baby. Let me see what is written here. Where meaning comes first. That's it. She doesn't drive a car. She doesn't ride a bike. Okay, right. And then some students may ask something that they want to say, but they don't know the verb. And then you help them or ask other students to help and have the student repeat the sentence. For example, if the student says, she doesn't anda de bicicleta. And then you can either say ride a bike or ask students to help. And then when it is said ride a bike, have the student who wanted to say this sentence Say the complete sentence again. She doesn't ride a bike. This repetition is meaningful. I'm going to write this here. This repetition needs to be meaningful. There's nothing wrong with repetition as long as it's meaningful, as long as it makes sense. Oh, if I wanted to say, ela não anda de bicicleta, but I didn't know how to do it in English, and now I was told how to do it, I am the one who needs to say the complete sentence. So that perhaps when I want to use this sentence again, I'll be able to say, she doesn't ride a bike, or I don't ride a bike, or somebody else doesn't ride a bike, okay? What we shouldn't do when it comes to repetition is keep on asking students to repeat sentences such as, my cell phone is black. Repeat, everybody, my cell phone is black. Well, teacher, my cell phone is blue. So why am I asking everybody to repeat, my cell phone is black, if somebody has a blue cell phone? So this is what we need to have in mind when it comes to repetition. If it is meaningful, it can be done, and it should be done because it helps a lot, okay? If it is true for everybody, you can have everybody repeat the sentence. If there's a poster on the wall and there are people doing different activities in this poster, there's a girl eating an ice cream, you can have everybody repeat, the girl is eating an ice cream, because this sentence is true for everybody in the room, okay? But we can't ask people to say, I'm teaching English. Repeat, everybody, I'm teaching English, if I am the only person who's doing that. Why am I saying this? Because I know that some people say that nowadays repetition shouldn't take place in the classroom. It can take place, as I said, as long as it's meaningful. Exactly. Meaningful repetition is the key, definitely. As long as it's meaningful, you can repeat. For instance, how do you ask the age of a person in English? How old are you? So you can ask students to repeat this question because that's the way you ask how old the person is. And that's fine, okay? And we should also use the board more often. For instance, how old are you? There's no problem to have this structure, this skeleton on the board. Some students need this, other students don't. But we need to remember that our job is to help students who need our help, because the ones who don't need our help will learn despite our presence. We should have that in mind, right? So despite our presence, despite the approach we believe in, they'll learn. So these students don't actually need us. But what about the other students who do need us? So writing structures on the board, skeletons, chunks of language help lots and lots of students. And when we do this, we are not exactly, visual learners also need it. We are not spoon feeding our students. We're not opening their mouths and telling them, say this. No, what we're doing is, well, to talk about your age, this is the structure you use. Now tell me, how old are you? And then the person goes, I'm 46 years old. Wonderful. Spoon feeding is, you don't give students the opportunity to think, and you tell them what they should say. This is spoon feeding, which is different from what we're talking about. Scaffolding, exactly. Yes. And we should also and always think about the complete structure, right? Um, what I mean is, how old are you? 15. Wonderful. But if you're teaching this, you should have students use the complete structure at first. Because later they can choose when they are in a real situation or working in pairs if they want to say, I'm 46 years old or only 46 or 46 years old, right? But if we don't provide them with this opportunity at first to use the complete structure, they won't be able to choose later. And the students need to have the opportunity to choose. Okay, let me post this here so everybody can see. Let me see, Luis. So the secret is teaching grammar without emphasizing that the students are trying to get the hang of it. Um, if I understood your question, I think, in my opinion, we need to focus on how students use grammar and not how students should talk about grammar. Because what I see very often is teachers are worried about students knowing the name of the verb tense, knowing the structure, but quite often the students don't know how to use the structure, which is the most important thing, right? I hope I have answered your question, Luis. So yeah, I do believe that there's a huge difference between talking about grammar and using grammar. And what we quite often do is we talk about grammar. We start our class telling students, today we're going to study the past simple. This is talking about grammar and not using grammar. If you believe that you should help your students use grammar, you can start your class about the past simple by, for example, writing yesterday on the board. You're setting the scene. And when you write yesterday on the board, if a person doesn't know what it means, you can translate it or have somebody translate, or you can use a calendar to show that you refer to the previous day. There are different ways to do it. But the thing is, teaching should start from a context. So if you have built the context, which is yesterday, and then you will start using verbs that they already know to talk about the present. And then you go, oh, yesterday I played the video game. You can have those sentences written. Yesterday I played the video game. Students will notice that there's something different with the verb play. And then they go, é de, porque tá no passado. And then you go, yes, and continue your class, right? And then you go, okay, yesterday I played the video game. What about you? Did you play video game yesterday? And then the student says, yes, eu joguei. What do you have to do? Oh, repeat the sentence. Yesterday I played video game. Repeat. Yesterday I played video game. And if a student says, eu não joguei, you teach how to say that in English, because you are working with real and meaningful communication. It will be much more chances that the students will use grammar, use the past simple more naturally, are much higher if you use this approach, which is the deductive approach, right? And then once again, if students can't understand the ED, you explain that, but you shouldn't start from a list of verbs, and then the students look at the list and they go, oh, what do I do with this, right? Because if a student in a conversation says, yesterday I go to the beach, everybody will understand. And then again, I'm not saying that we won't correct, but you see, it is much important that the student is able to say, yesterday I go to the beach, than not having a clue about, should I use now yesterday, today, which adverb of time should I use? Teaching grammar in a communicative approach. Yes, definitely, Samuel. So let's move on. I have 14 minutes here, but we have time. Right. Oh, going back to heterogeneous and homogeneous. Heterogeneous items, like the second example, are typically open-ended. Let me show you the second example again. This is the second example. So this is an example of an open-ended item, okay? They are intended to enlist a wide range of different, equally acceptable responses. So depending on how much I know, if I know more, I'll be able to show that I know more. But if I am struggling with the language, I should still be able to use the structure. She doesn't ride a bike. She doesn't do this, right? Because this is what we need to guarantee. When we look at the syllabus, what do students have to learn? What are the objectives? Oh, even the students who are struggling, are they being able to achieve what is expected? If not, if the answer is no, then we need to go back and think of more and more activities. Because everybody should be able, right, to say simple, short sentences and not long sentences explaining things. For example, she doesn't go to school because she is just a baby. We don't expect that. Maybe a student who knows more will be able to come up with a sentence like this. But we need to guarantee that everybody in the room, mainly the average students, are able to come up with the sentence. What about close-ended items, like the first one? Let me show you again. This is an example of a close-ended item. Why is it close-ended? Because it has only one answer, right? Only right answer. And it is a homogeneous item. Why? They provide opportunity, they provide appropriate practice for only a limited number of members of the class. Once again, there's nothing wrong with homogeneous items, with exercises which have only one right answer. The problem, in my opinion, is only using this kind of exercise in class. And of course, you may disagree with me, no problem. And the last key feature, which you have already mentioned, is interest. Learners who are bored find it difficult to concentrate. If all we want is to know if students know the grammar rule, students may find it boring because they don't see how they can actually use that grammar item in their real life. Well, interest is an essential feature of successful practice, not just an optional improvement. Well, thinking of activities which interest our students shouldn't be optional, right? We should always have that in mind, even when we use a textbook, because I know, and I like to use textbooks, because textbooks should be seen as the backbone, right? So what else can I do with this textbook? It helps us a lot. We don't have to think about the content, the objectives. These things are there. But once again, how we're going to work on all these things is going to make the whole difference. Let's see some other activities here. Look at this first example. It says, underline the verbs in the sentences. Only this, underline the verbs in the sentences. Then the students read the sentences, underline the verbs, and that's it. According to this instruction, I'm not worried about meaning, isn't it? If my students don't know the meaning, it doesn't matter, as long as they underline the verbs in the sentences. Okay. Let me change here the slide. Second exercise. Choose the numbers of the sentences in activity 1. 1. In which sentences is a verb followed by another one in the ing form? And number 2, in which sentences is a verb followed by another one in the infinitive? Oh, we have to go back to the exercise, to exercise number 1, and say, oh, I love watching rugby. What I have to do is find ing in the sentence. Then I go back and check here. Only this. And then once again, if we only do this, how are we going to know that our students are able to use verbs followed by the ing form and verbs followed by the infinitive? I don't have this answer if we only use these kinds of exercises. They are much more practical, faster. They don't challenge us. There's only one right answer. They are homogeneous. They're not that interesting. We can do it. Them really fast, right? But are they actually helping students understand meaning and use grammar? I don't think so. Let's look at this other example here. It says, complete the sentences with information about yourself. I avoid, I can say, I avoid crowds. My sentence is correct. In your opinion, what is the objective of this exercise? Number 5. Type for me, please. Right. What do you think the person who wrote this exercise had in mind? Let's see. To complete with verbs. Verbs followed by ing. Or 2, right? Yes. My question is, where is this written in the instruction? It's not written there. Complete the sentences with information about yourself. If I say, I avoid crowds, the teacher can't say my sentence is incorrect. But then, this is an example of an exercise which may not practice what it needs to practice. And then we need to adapt. A possible instruction would be complete the sentences with information about yourself, starting with verbs. Then you would be able to know if your students can use verbs followed by ing or verbs followed by 2. So what I would do is I would start my class about this topic, verbs followed by ing, verbs followed by 2, with examples. So, I avoid listening to loud music. I would write this sentence on the board or have it on a slide. Oh, I avoid listening to loud music. What about you? Ah, me too. Oh, me too. Repeat the sentence. I avoid listening to loud music. And then a student says, ah, I don't. Eu adoro isso. And so, say it in English. But what do you avoid doing? And then you start. Helping students use grammar, enlarge their repertoire of vocabulary and language and grammar, uh, always having their reality in mind. After you do all this oral practice, and then you can have the students write sentences about them after the speaking practice, right? Writing should be the last step. Lots of speaking activity first. Then you can ask students to work on exercise 1 and 2 if you think they need it. Because one thing we need to have in mind is my students are using the grammar structure correctly. Do I really need to stop and talk about grammar? Think about that. In my opinion, we don't need to do this all the time. But if we do, as I said, there's no problem, right? If we actually understand what the communicative approach is all about, if we believe in teaching grammar inductively, we won't do this. Okay? I'm going to answer the question, just a second. So any one particular exercise may, of course, display one or more of these features to a lesser degree and still be effective in gaining specific objectives. Well, there are 5 key features. It doesn't mean that if an activity has only 3, it won't be a good activity. That's not what Penny believes. What does she say about gap fill exercises? They are extremely common in the classroom and grammar textbooks, probably because they are easy to design and administer, and teachers and textbook authors are often unaware that they are testing more than teaching. If there's only a right answer, I'm testing more than teaching. And the BNCC again, it says here, the study of lexemes and grammar, including elements such as verb forms and tenses, sentence structures, and discourse connectors, focuses on inductively helping students understand how English works as a system. Well, once again, I wanted to show you how our document is aligned with the other book I use as a reference, which was written by Penny. Let me see here. The students give positive feedback on grammar learning when they themselves start making the corrections. The students give positive feedback on grammar learning when they themselves start making the corrections. Yes, they do. Because they start seeing how it should be used correctly, right? Okay, so I'm ending. I'm almost have 2 minutes. Well, last but not least, I'd like to ask you once again to regard these tips as suggestions from a colleague and to use them selectively and critically, keeping your teaching context in mind. However, regardless of your context and your textbook and the textbook you use, I truly believe it is possible to teach grammar inductively. You may need to adapt some activities or create new ones, but it is possible. Yes. Oh, thank you. Great suggestion. It's much more student-centered. Definitely. Because we are there for them. We need to think about that, right? Why do we teach? We teach because of our students. So it needs to be more student-centered. Although it is hard for us because teachers usually tend to talk more, like to have the control of things, right? These are the references I used. In my abstract, this presentation explores inductive, engaging ways to teach grammar as a tool for real communication. Practical ideas will be shared to promote interaction while aligning with BNCC principles. Have I accomplished that? Let me know. Yes, I have. Thank you. Once again, I want to invite you to this amazing event, which is going to take place next week. It's for free and open to everybody, members and no members. Yes, Vera, a long time, wasn't it? Okay. Hope to see you here in Vitória next year for our 22nd Brastiço International Conference. Make sure you send proposals. We'll be more than glad to have you with us. And if you want to continue this conversation, I'll be glad to do it. This is my email address. And you can also follow me on Instagram. The invitation to the seminars, you mean the event next week? I think that's what you mean. Yes, they're there again in the chat box. All right. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you leave with ideas to make grammar teaching even more meaningful. See you next time. Bye-bye.